The other day I came across a bunch of videos about this liquid chrome marker, or what people were calling a mirror marker because it's so shiny. You can see even the tip of this marker here looks like crumpled up aluminum foil. It is really, really glossy. I didn't believe it would do what was advertised. It seemed too good to be true, so I got one to try it out for myself, and holy crap, this is really, really shiny. It was not a lie, if anything, far from it. This really does exactly what you want it to do and what was advertised. It is a mirror as soon as it hits on the paper. So much so, I made a giant mirror on the paper, and you can even see the reflection of my tape in the background. And that's before it's even dried, which I would say is probably the only downside to this stuff. It takes ages to dry, and by ages I mean sometimes days or weeks. But hey, it works, and they also sell it in a refillable format in a dropper bottle, which made me think, okay, this stuff needs to go in dice immediately. I get out some parchment paper and my typical cap dice molds for our experiment, but I'm also going to try out my mini bases and try out a couple different things with this marker. Apparently it doesn't really stick very well to silicone, who knew, and so I'm not going to be able to coat the inside of my molds, but that's not a huge deal. I do want to try a couple different experiments with it here on the silicone. You can see how shiny this is by seeing the reflection of the dropper in the liquid as I'm pouring it into the molds. It's crazy shiny, but we'll get back to that in a minute. For now, we need to mix up some resin, and I'm going to use Envirotex light resin. This resin is a 1:1 by volume mixture of resin, so I mix up equal parts of part A and part B until I get a smooth mixture. Whenever you're mixing this stuff, you probably want to mix for about 5 minutes or until you have no streaks left over in your resin, just some bubbles, which we'll take care of later. I'm going to pour some of this just base clear resin over my miniature base molds for an experiment of seeing what will actually stick to that resin with this liquid chrome stuff. One of them, I just pour 2 drops of the liquid chrome on top to see if it will cure, because I'm curious if you could do a petri dish method with this, because that would be awesome. For the actual dice, I'm going to pour in a bunch of drops of this, probably about 8 in total, and mix it up within the resin. You can see as it's sitting there over time, it actually creates a naturally perfectly smooth mirror on top of the liquid, which is nice, but I do got to mix this stuff up, and when I do start doing that, I notice it basically turns into mixing resin with silver mica powder. It almost looks identical, but hey, we're going to push forward and see what it's going to look like after it's cured. I'm going to treat this just like any other normal dice that I make and fill up the molds, overfilling the cap molds on the bottom half of the molds. That way there's excess resin and can be pushed inside of the mold if needed, and I pour a little bit of extra resin on the lids for each mold. We have 7 dice molds, 1 for each die in a normal dice set, but I do have some excess resin here, so I'm going to pour even more of this liquid chrome on top to see if we can get a mirror and just leave this one sitting outside of the pressure pot. I put the lids on top of each mold, squishing out any of the excess resin, doing that on all 7 molds, and then put them inside of the pressure pot. I'm going to set them in there at about 40 psi for 24 hours before I pull them out, and bada bing bada boom, we have some gorgeous looking dice. Not exactly chrome like I had expected, but still pretty. We will have to get back to this though, as there was one problem with the D6. I had a void appear in the corner. A lot of people always ask, how do I fix those? And so I'll show you right here, right now. Voids are actually really easy to fix. Just mix up a little bit more of the same resin and mica mixture, in my case this weird liquid chrome mixture that I did before, and just put enough resin into the corner so that you can fill up that void. And you always want to have a little bit of excess resin. It's way easier to do this if you haven't taken the dice out of the mold yet. That way, trying to put the dice back in the mold, you don't accidentally leave an air pocket in there, which can cause problems. But hey, presto, after another day in the pressure pot, we have our dice with no voids in the corner, and hey, you can't even tell. These dice weren't going to be the completely chrome dice like I had hoped for, since the liquid wouldn't stick to the silicone and give us an essentially cold casted set of dice, but I came up with an alternative. I made another clear set of dice, and we're going to go ahead and sand both of these sets so that they are a glass-like shine to them before we move on to plan B. So I'm going to get a flat plane like this glass pane here and polish all of the dice up with these Zona papers. I like to do a wet polishing. It generally gives me a overall better polishing and keeps the dust levels to a minimum. I go ahead and polish all the way up through all of the grits until we have some really, really shiny looking dice here. With our completed dice, it was time to move on to plan B. Plan B was titled, If You Can't Beat 'em, Ink 'em, and so I took the marker and started coloring inside each of the numbers. I was really worried it wasn't going to stick to the resin, but gosh dang if I wasn't surprised when it actually did. I do my normal paint and wipe method where I just paint the numbers in and then wipe the excess off with my finger. I do wear gloves for this part though, as their data sheet says that you're supposed to. It also says non-toxic, so I'm kind kind of confused there, but oh well. I'm going to try and paint the rest of them using the liquid. That way, if you want to replicate this, you only need one product, just that liquid. And I had no problems using the liquid. If anything, it was easier for smaller things like my logo because it was able to get into the crevices more easily. Now, I did notice that small things like my logo don't actually pop and shine all that much compared to the numbers because it's just so thin. The crystal glass clear one was looking so good, but it also had the same issue with the logo being so thin. So if you are going to do this, I recommend having big numbers on your dice. But hey, that's the beauty of experimentation, right? I got to experiment doing that on these dice, and now I know. And now I have this skill in which I can share with the rest of you. Oh, is this the part where I say, did somebody say Skillshare? Oh, did nobody tell you? Nuh-uh. Yeah, we got in like a ton of auditions this month. They're pretty good. Do you want to hear them? I guess.
I'm sorry. Did somebody say Skillshare?
Did someone say Skillshare?
Did somebody say Skillshare?
You just had to go and say it. Did somebody say Skillshare?
Did somebody say Skillshare?
My name is TJ, I'm 5'2", and did somebody say Skillshare?
Did somebody say Skillshare? Sagte jemand Skillshare?
Did somebody say Skillshare?
Did someone say Skillshare?
Oh, did somebody just say Skillshare?
Did somebody say Skillshare?
Wait, did somebody say Skillshare?
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 I don't know, I can't even decide. Which one do you like the best? I thought mine was good. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and to all the people who auditioned. And if you haven't heard of Skillshare before, they're an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for you creators so you can deepen your passions, get lost in creativity, or even explore a new skill. There's tons of classes on there, though they don't have a transitions class guy, and I am free for that, like art, woodworking, resin making, or even voice acting, which seems appropriate for this week. It's designed around learning, so there's not going to be any ads, and they're always launching a ton of new classes. So even if you can't find something that you like, it might be there eventually. That way you can follow your creativity wherever it takes you. One of my favorite classes is the Accents and Voice Impression class by Charlie Hopkinson. He's so freaking funny, and I absolutely love his class. You might have even seen him on YouTube. You should definitely check it out. So let's help each other out because the first 1,000 of my subs to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can start exploring your creativity today. But enough of that, let's get back to the actual dice and experiments we worked on. After inking all of these dice, you can see the chrome looks fantastic. However, there is some leftover residue from where I wiped it off. No big deal, you can just take some alcohol and a paper towel to wipe off any excess markings that you might have. I do this on both sets of dice because the clear one especially had a lot of excess paint on it, and now we have our completed dice set. It looks really, really good, though it is kind of hard to see on that gray background, so I'm going to show you here on the wood. But man, is it not exactly what I was expecting, but it turned out even better than I hoped. I can't even describe how good these look on the table and how shiny each of the numbers are. Again, that logo just has really, really thin parts, so it doesn't show up quite as well as the other ones, but these really do kind of sparkle. It's like looking at a disco ball. Light kind of catches little bits and pieces of it and just shines right into your eye. I like both sets of dice for different reasons. I would say that the one that has the liquid chrome mixed up within the resin that I'm showing here is just a little bit easier to read. I can read the numbers on all of these dice from across the room. However, the crystal clear ones, I actually have to kind of be at the table to read. I think that's just a byproduct of having them be see-through. Normal see-through dice are hard to read if you're not actually on the table, but these ones that are so reflective both inside the die and with the chrome numbers just make it a little bit harder to read from further away. So if you have trouble reading your dice, maybe don't do these and go with one that has an actual color on the inside. Though you could really go nuts and make some crazy, crazy things with the mirrored effect on the numbers. But why keep telling you when I can just show you? I thought it was so funny that the last roll had the nat 1, but I didn't see that crit in the very beginning until I was editing, so don't judge me. I'm also going to look at these experiments, and they turned out great, both on the textured side of the bases and the open air clear side, which is really, really smooth. The only one that had a problem was the one that I tried to turn into a petri dish, and it's still just a little bit soft. You can see I can dig my fingernail into it. Maybe it'll cure over some more days, but if I'm just going to say based on these results, maybe don't try and do the petri dish method with this. However, with the other experiments that I did, the mirrored top on these where I had the excess resin is really flat, fine, it's fully cured, but the bottom of these weren't cured, which is strange because this is all the same resin that I used when I poured it into the dice. The mirror is great, you can even see my stupid face in the reflection there, but it just didn't cure at the bottom. I'm honestly not sure why that's the case. Maybe the liquid chrome on the top prevented some oxygenation that the resin needed to fully cure? I doubt that. Maybe there was just some uncured resin on the corners of each of the cup. That's probably the more likely situation. However, it happening in both the cups seems strange to me. Let me know if you know why this exactly happens in the comments, because maybe I can try and prevent that in the future and get a really mirrored top dice. No matter what, I'm very happy with both of these dice sets. I think they both came out great. I'm very happy to add them to my collection, and it was a lot of fun trying out this viral sensation of this liquid mirror markers and seeing what I could turn them into as far as dice sets are concerned. If they ever make a liquid gold mirror marker, I will buy stock in that company. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you might want to see more like it in the future, or let me know of other things you want me to test out. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. I want to know that too, and either way, I hope that you have a fantastic day.